Welcome back, everybody. You got Will and I-Man here from the Block Runner, MetaZone, Roby, and Inscribe, and today we're going to be talking about some NAT.
Everybody breathe collectively.
Yeah, take a deep breath.
Yeah, everything's fine, right?
Something happened.
Some of you may not have noticed at all. Actually, most of you probably did it.
Yeah, sometimes those things are good. Sometimes they're not so good.
Yeah, to me, it pinged a lot of different receptors in my own brain, different emotional responses. Of course, initially is like,
We did it.
yeah, yesterday it was like, holy guacamole, dude. There's like four or five miners, like all of a sudden.
Yeah, they just woke up.
They're fidgeting with NAT. Like that's crazy. And then I was like, are any of them Western miners? It's like that would be a nice little, new notch in the belt.
Yeah, I think one of them was, I believe.
I think Brains is like in the Czech Republic or something like that. So I was like, this is cool, right? And then you sitting across from me were a little bit more like neutral. Yeah, a little bit more neutral in your reaction.
Wait, let it play out, dudes. Let it play out.
Why? Why was there like a hesitancy?
Okay, so let's talk about what happened. So I guess let's go to the first tweet here. It says, in the last three hours, 4 mining pools have all adopted NAT.
That's what we all saw.
They all include Ultimus Pool, Brains Pool, SEC Pool, and one more, Mining Squared.
Right.
We're like, damn, all 4 of them, huh?
Yeah, it's cool. And then we went to NAT GMI dashboard, of course, leaderboard, to like see who, where are they on the list.
Yeah, here's SEC Pool. Here's let's go to the next page.
Page 2.
Brains Pool, Mining Squared, and Ultimus Pool.
Was it Ultimus Pool?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so they're all there, right? It's like, wow, so we got some new boxes to check.
Yeah. So then I was like 4 of them all in one shot. It's like, that's weird. It's cool. It's a little weird, but it's very cool.
Okay.
Right? And then I was like, okay. So I went to my agent. I was like, is there a connection between any of these guys? Like how, is there a connection? It turns out there is. So it pointed me to this article. I think B10C, Bitcoin developer, I think is between this individual and Mononot. And if you scroll down to the very bottom, you should read it, by the way, because it's very interesting. It's titled Bitcoin Mining Centralization in 2025. A very thing that we talk about often here in this channel.
True.
And so scroll all the way to the bottom, and you see this. You see this pie chart, and then look at here. It says, as of writing, the following pools are measured as part of the Antpool and Friends. So we got Antpool, we have Clover Pool, Brains, right? We have Ultimus Pool. So now my spidey sense is like, okay, SEC Pool and Mining Squared, all 4 of them hit the mark.
They have a lot of friends, dude.
Yeah, a lot of friends.
Holy crap.
So I was like, okay.
But not all of these friends were a part of this, event.
No, they were not.
Isn't that also kind of weird?
That is kind of weird. I agree.
Okay. All right.
All right. So then I was like, so I was like, okay, so there's something here. There's a connection to Antpool. Yeah. By the way, Antpool has been moving NAT since like basically day 1.
Yes.
It's the first mover. So they've been dubbed NatPool instead of Antpool as a result.
It's a frequent interactor for sure. You could just look at the value they got left. They sell.
Yeah,
they be selling.
They're buying the tomahawk steaks here.
For sure. They're enjoying the subsidies.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
So what do we have here? We have Antpool connected to the 4 new miners. I was like, Antpool must have sent a memo. It's like, guys, it's time to move the NAT token.
That was my first inclination as well.
Yeah.
Some sort of conference happened in the
Yeah, some email was sent and the mobilization started occurring.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool. It's like, Benny, what do you think? He was like, yeah, this is weird. And so of course we were like, okay, let's check those boxes off, right?
Yeah. Good times.
Yeah, and then Ordinal's wallet sent this message, which prompted us to go look into the data, and it turns out these miners all sent their NAT to a single wallet address. So that was like an indicator. It was like, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right.
Right.
How do you have miners who are all connected to Antpool, who are separate sort of entities, all sent to one address? That doesn't make really a lot of sense. So yeah, that that address ended up selling all that NAT token basically at a 50% discount. But instantly it was eaten up by somebody.
Absorbed.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the people who understand, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like flash sale. That's an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So Benny and I were watching this in real time, right? So we knew what this address was doing, and we knew they were listing it on Ornal's wallet, and so turns out this ended up being some sort of vulnerability that the scammer kind of uncovered. And the uncovering here is, if you go back to this article, clearly Antpool has a technology that allows these individuals to spin up their own pool. And it seemed like Ultimus Pool, Mining Squared, Brains, and, you know, all four of them use basically the same technology. And it turns out that they sign all UTXO outputs. All unspent transaction outputs are all signed automatically. And all four of them had the same sort of profile of functionality. So what ended up happening is this scammer sent a transfer inscription to these addresses, and because this transfer inscription is sent and all UTXO outputs are signed, that transfer inscription transferred the NAT token to that one address.
Right.
And so yeah, that is exactly what happened. So once it was transferred, then this person obviously knew to list it on Ornal's wallet, so they knew what to do. So they're like in the mix here of understanding like how everything works.
Yeah. So how should people react to this, right? Because I've seen mixed reactions, mixed emotions. Again, me myself, initially, once I saw the tweets on X, it's like, because also Foundry was involved here as well. There was an attempt, I think, on Foundry.
Correct.
And you could verify that by seeing like a transfer inscription that was now generated, but no outflow of NAT.
Yeah. Yeah, because Foundry doesn't sign all UTXO outputs automatically.
Yeah. So they have some other kind of process.
Yeah.
Independent from Antpool and Friends.
Yes.
Right? So as Antpool and Friends was like the systemic target, maybe because this insider, or who knows, somebody knows there's like a vulnerability, exploitable vector there.
Yeah.
And they went for it. And from my point of view, thank goodness this happened like now rather than like some point in the future whenever valuations are much higher.
Yeah.
Right. And like dramatizations can be much more amplified.
Yes.
Because now we've got like reactionary measures employed, right, to prevent this from ever happening again.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are other chains that have been compromised before? How have they reacted?
That's true. That's another thing that started to enter my brain. It's like, is this normal? And then once you analyze the history of crypto, which we've done, it is normal. Like I remember Ethereum had like a major hack and an exploit.
That's right.
And I didn't know this for a long time. I think you told me like somewhat recently that even Bitcoin in its early days had
let's check that out.
Pretty major exploit.
So Bitcoin,
this is
Ethereum. That's Ethereum. So we had the DAO hack, but Bitcoin had an overflow bug back in 2010, right? August 15, 2010, an anonymous hacker. Think about this. Bitcoin is about a year old and change, but a hacker exploited a critical vulnerability in Bitcoin, allowing them to generate 184 billion Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's insane.
So Bitcoin is the first decentralized cryptocurrency. Vulnerability assessment attack explained the total supply of Bitcoin, famously listed at 21 million tokens. However, in an extraordinary breach of this limit, a hacker managed to create in amounts of Bitcoin 8,000 times greater than the cap. This occurred in block 74,638, where a single transaction astonishingly generated 184 billion, distributing them across 3 different addresses. So this is a guy who knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Notably, 2 of these addresses each received a staggering 92 billion Bitcoins exactly. The incident revealed that the hacker had managed to create Bitcoins in the manner that defied established rules by the network. This was due to the gap in code responsible for verifying transactions. It failed to handle output values so large they caused an overflow when added together. This oversight was first noticed by Jeff, now co-founder and CEO of Block, who brought it to the attention of Bitcoin Talk forums, labeling it as an overflow bug. In response, Satoshi Nakamoto, in collaboration with other developers, swiftly engineer a solution within 3 hours of the incident being reported and 5 hours from its occurrence.
So history rhymes, dude. That's basically what happened here, right? It felt within the same bounds of
time frames.
Yeah, expeditiousness, if that's a word. Shout out to Benny and friends.
Yeah. Benny was keeping an eye on this. As soon as he saw like the tweets, he was like, his spidey sense started tingling. I'm gonna keep an eye on this stuff.
Right.
It's unusual. All 4 miners move it all basically at the same time. It's very unusual. These 4 independent miners send to a single address, but maybe this is business, right?
Yeah.
But then as soon as he saw them dumping the tokens, I was like, confirmed, that's the profile of a scammer.
Correct. So with that comes, again, acknowledgement and reaffirmation that, there's a discrepancy somewhere, whether it's in like the fact that miners their current day hygiene or etiquette or whatever just is not aligned to this distribution model.
Yeah.
Which clearly it's not. So there's got to be ways to kind of prevent this lack of, I guess, hygiene.
Yeah.
Resulting in further exploits, which is exactly what Benny implemented. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
So can you explain what that looks like?
Yeah. So Benny implemented this update pretty quickly as soon as this was discovered. This mandatory release and hardens miner rewards distribution against transfer poisoning. So transfer poisoning is the name of this thing. This is not unusual. This is like a situation that has occurred in the past with BRC20s and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so ultimately it solves this. If an attacker sends a token transfer inscription to, for example, SEC pool sends this transfer inscription to a dispatcher, which is exactly what happened here. And once the dispatcher received that transfer inscription, the attacker sent a token send to it. And the dispatcher transacts automatically and sends the change back to the same address, which in the protocol confirms that you are confirming that you're wanting to send that token, that token amount. By that confirms the token sends encodes the recipient addresses of the attacker, and attack is complete. So what this update does is now the miners have to opt in to this unlocking the transfer of the tokens.
Right.
And so it's just a simple inscription. They inscribe this, they send it to themselves, and unlocks the ability to transfer NAT.
Yeah.
And once it's unlocked, now they can actually transfer the NAT to whatever address, hot wallet, to connect it to an exchange.
Yeah, it makes sense. It reminds me of the OG bitmap days where it's like the tapping.
Yes.
It's actually like the roots of the name of the protocol, right?
That's right.
It's like you had to like send your bitmap to yourself.
Yeah.
In order to initiate like a parcel inscription.
That's correct.
So to keep all the indexing orderly and to keep things structured.
Yeah, if you're new to Bitcoin, sending stuff to yourself is a very common action that many like protocols invoke in their protocols, right? Mm-hmm. Because it confirms that you are actually intending to do what you're intending to do.
Right.
Right, because PSBTs, they operate very similarly. Partially signed Bitcoin transactions is a partially signed Bitcoin transaction. And when you partially sign this thing, you are committing to an atomic transfer of UTXOs. And so if someone sends you a partially signed Bitcoin transaction that says, send me all your UTXOs, and you blindly sign it because that's the system process that you've implemented, then you are doing an atomic swap of a gigantic UTXO.
Right.
Of a ton of Bitcoin, and you're swapping it with another UTXO with no Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Okay, so this adds like another intermediary step, I guess, between miner and protocol to participate in this new second subsidy distribution model, which it's good. That means it further reinforces the adoption, I guess, categorization per miner, right? And it makes things a little more transparent than what they were previously. So that way you have actual broadcasting of intent beforehand.
Exactly right. Yeah, so the community didn't get this wrong. So they actually did it right, because I remember telling them anytime that you see the from address and it is a miner sending to something, that is a confirmation that they are interacting with the protocol. However, in this case, because they sent it to the exact same address, 29.8V, then that sent a signal. It's like, wait a minute, that doesn't feel right. And so now if you see a send to, then you can 99.99% be assured that this is a legit like moving of NAT token.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's what happened.
So no fires then?
Not anymore.
Okay.
No fires, but also no check marks.
Well, there's still 4 or 5 major ones.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, you're right. So no further check marks. Although I have to retract my public tweet of like,
yeah,
we got some checking to do.
Yep.
But it's okay. This is kind of part of again, you understand like Bitcoin, Ethereum's history. A lot of other crypto tokens, they go through events like this, and it just solidifies things at the protocol level. Might even reinforce things at like the governance level. How do you actually, inject your own protocol etiquettes and rules and structures moving forward, so that in Bitcoin's case, I think that attributes to a lot of like why things move so slow in the Bitcoin ecosystem, is to avoid adding too many disruptive verticals around their protocol that could result in unknown exploits down the line.
Yeah, 100%. This
is why it's almost impossible to get the Bitcoin Core developer group to actually iterate on anything.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
It takes almost a decade to get things done, but for good reason.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to disrupt the rails too much.
Yeah, and clearly in Ethereum's case and Bitcoin's case, compromises do happen. It's okay. As long as you fix it quickly.
Yeah, fix it, and don't ignore it. Don't let it fester into some sort of like, bigger problem than it actually is.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what happened. So, yeah, NAT is completely fine. Everything's okay. I don't think the price has really done much.
No, the price,
other than the little
little blippening.
Yeah, the little flash sell event.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the same.
Like,
that little dip was eaten by somebody, and all is good. I want to see if there's anything else. Yeah, I think the big takeaway here is that there's others talking about the same problem that we were talking about, like centralization. They're calling things out too, right?
For sure.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's just a question of, okay, people are calling it out, but you're not seeing like a pandemonious reaction to these call outs yet. So like at what threshold does it become of a systemic concern to the point where people are much more
how centralized is too centralized?
I guess that's the question, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone can answer that with any satisfaction. It's like, is 6 too centralized? It feels like yes, but maybe it's not. I don't know.
Yeah. Whatever it is, that is like the macro, I guess, tailwind situation that we kind of append to this whole NAT thesis, and why it seems like NAT is on an inevitable trajectory to kind of experience what like Vitenter and Tau is going through right now. So watch our future video about that, because if you've been paying attention to crypto Twitter, it's all the rage, right?
Yeah.
As far as Vitenter and that ecosystem, which we covered, several years ago when we first found out about it in 2023.
Yeah, 2.5 years ago.
2023 or 2022. I mean, it was way back then, dude.
We'll have to go back into the archives.
More than 3 years ago, I'd say. But it's now experiencing like permeation through the zeitgeist for what I perceive is, it's converged, these macro tailwinds. AI has festered into such a behemoth that you can't help but be bothered by the idea of centralized AI, and like, is there a counter decentralized version of that out there? And Vitenter naturally falls in within that conversation, right?
Yeah, so it falls in so hard that Chamath and JCal and these big influencers are talking about it.
Yeah, so parallel that to Bitcoin and this subsidy problem that as of today it's kind of like being whispered about.
Yeah.
But at some point the macro tailwinds will converge, just like as they have for AI, because the problem only gets worse over time.
Yep.
That the conversations will be had by these major influencer types because it's unavoidable. Bitcoin it's the king. It's the big.
And the influencers want to make money.
Well, yeah.
Right. So once they figure out that there's a solution to the Bitcoin security budget issue and it's a token, they're going to buy that token and then they're going to talk about it.
In theory. In theory. So that's how we see it, right? So that's why it's important to kind of keep your gauges around these things, identify other like organic initiatives out there in the crypto space, which there are very few.
Yeah.
Most of them are architected,
yeah,
fluffery. Whenever there is like an organic attempt at solving a big problem, like definitely pay attention to it. And yeah, these things take time to actually proliferate into genuine, success stories.
Right? That's right. Yeah. So I want to say one last thing. So the biggest takeaway here is the only way to prevent issues like this, because Bitcoin is going to continue doing updates, miners are going to be doing weird things, this or that, they're going to be doing weird setups that we can't predict. The only way to mitigate situations like this is that every single miner in Bitcoin needs to know about NAT.
Yeah.
That's the only way they can avoid this. Antpool knows about it, via BTC, F2 Pool, Spider Pool, they all know about it. They have structures where they can't get compromised in the same way that that Antpool and friends got compromised. So Antpool needs to do a little bit better job, communicating with their customers and having best security practices for things like this. Because if Antpool is moving it, they're selling the NAT token as they should, then you would think their customers would probably like to do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't do that, and yeah, we had this result. So
yeah, so the quest goes on then, as far as like becoming or spreading awareness, not just for miners, but everybody involved in the ecosystem, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for us. If you guys have any questions on the vulnerability that occurred, the solution, what the NAT token is, we got plenty of videos that explain all that stuff, especially the NAT token. Yeah, I appreciate you guys for watching, and we will catch you in the next video.
Peace.